And for those who enjoy this channel and would love to support us financially, please feel free to hit that donate link. We'd greatly appreciate it. God bless. What about the groups within groups patterns evolutionists point to as evidence for descent with modification? Nested hierarchies in DNA, anatomy, and physiology are also predicted by creationists based on the design model. The classification of life can be compared to the classification of modes of transportation on how different companies manufacture cars based on their similarities, forming hierarchies. We can simply illustrate this nested hierarchy by employing humans as a foundation. We all have enormous amounts of features in common with each other, and this observation places us in the group humans. How much do we have in common with a chimpanzee or an elephant? Well, we as humans all share much more with each other than we do with a chimpanzee. But we as humans actually have a lot more in common and share many more features with a chimpanzee than we do with an elephant or a horse. This is the groups within groups patterns that emerges when we begin to classify life. To simplify things, we are all grouped as humans. We are also grouped together with primates, and then we are grouped in an even more inclusive group called mammals. Why? Well, we have a lot more in common with chimpanzees, monkeys, elephants, and whales than we do with fish. But all of us collectively with the fish have more in common when we consider a backbone than we do with an insect. An insect is an invertebrate, which lacks a backbone. That being said, we are classified with the insects as animals and so have more in common with each other than we do with plants. Once again, this is the groups within groups pattern of life that the evolutionists say demonstrates descent with modification. Is the nested hierarchical pattern we see in life only explained by evolution and common descent? Why do we have much less in common with a fish than we do with a chimpanzee? Well, the evolutionists will say this is simply a reflection of time, and we have a much more recent common ancestor with the chimpanzee than we do with a fish, or an insect, or a plant. The evolutionist says this groups within groups pattern is expected if universal common ancestry were true. Well, it turns out that the means of transportation that humans design naturally fall within a groups within groups nested hierarchical pattern. All sedans are incredibly similar to each other. Sedans are much more similar to each other than they are to SUVs. Sedans and SUVs are more similar to each other than they are to tractors. Sedans, SUVs, and tractors are similar enough to each other that they can be grouped together as land vehicles, which would also set them apart from boats or airplanes. This is the groups within groups nested hierarchical classification that emerges in designed modes of transportation. Nested hierarchical patterns are simply a hallmark of design and reflective of God's hierarchical nature. God created life in hierarchical patterns in the same way we design things in these types of patterns. Those that attack the biblical creation model seem to think to themselves that if we really are made in the image of God, shouldn't we as humans be distinct from the rest of biology, as in have no similarities in anatomy, morphology, physiology, and genetics to the rest of biology? Well, the Bible doesn't imply in any way, shape, or form that we have biological life and then humans, which have absolutely no similarity to any other species out there. There is absolutely no reason for us to believe that based on a biblical model, there should be no type of hierarchy in the biological world. This means that there's no reason for the creationist or the evolutionist to assume that we shouldn't be more similar to one species, for example, the apes, than to another species, for example, a wolf. But even the evolutionist and their so-called phylogenetic tree of life has inconsistencies, which is why they look to convergent evolution, which is why incomplete lineage sorting exists, and which is why they look to loss of traits. They use these in order to accommodate inconsistencies with their tree of life. The bottom line is that both creationists and evolutionists predict nested hierarchical patterns in life. It comes down to the differentiating evidence that can help us determine what's true: universal common ancestry or limited ancestry. For all those who appreciate the work that we're doing here on Standing for Truth, please hit that subscribe button because we are just getting started.